We had actors whose boundaries changed based on their writer, and it was totally okay. And so if that's a question in your mind, know that you can always withdraw consent, and a really, really good intimacy coordinator and director are going to find the way to tell the story in an equally compelling way, and like you will still be honored.
First and foremost, I want to know how. Well, let's start at the usual place, which is how did this come about? Where did this story come from?
So this was, the pandemic was kind of coming, slowing down. And we were up, I was living at home in Boston, and we were on vacation in Vermont at a place that this is based on the Green River. And it's this wonderful place that's, kind of goes back to the radical fairy movement. And it's there's a preservation society that's run by a group of gay men, and it's very much like you see in the film. There's a clothing optional sign, and you just kind of park and walk up. And in Vermont, it's legal to leave your house with no clothes on. You just can't take them off in public, which is totally, it's true. And in New Hampshire, for instance, it's just totally illegal. You're not allowed to take it off in public or leave your house. But we didn't want to set the movie in Vermont because we thought New Hampshire was a more interesting place, just kind of politically. But we were up there just thinking what we were going to do with our lives after being in seclusion. And we just wanted to tell a story that was very authentic to us and dealt with some of the traumas or difficulties that we're dealing with identity politics and just being queer in today's world. A lot has gone on in the past, 5 to 10 years. And then he went to work. He started writing, and maybe you can add to this where kind of the germination came for you.
We were hanging on the Green River at this place called Rock River. We were hanging out with 12 friends in this awesome house, and the initial idea was, what if we did something like Gay Clue, which it's gay to begin with for a lot of different reasons. But what if it was like gay, like us gay, and because the river is this amazing community, you get naked on the river and you go in the woods, and you don't have to, you can do whatever you want. You can just stay in the river, you can hang out with friends, you can smoke, you can do mushrooms, you can whatever it is that makes you feel really comfortable and intimate with the community, or you can go in the woods and have sex. And we're like, it'd be really fun to set a story in that environment. And Gay Clue wasn't going to happen because we thought it would be a little difficult to shoot a $300,000 movie indoors during the pandemic. So we decided to create an environment where COVID was mitigated, but we could do something that would be sexy and kind of remind us of the world that we were idealizing and wanted people to have a window into. Yeah.
All right. So so how did you? What were your first steps in terms of? Well, let's start with casting. How did you go about casting this film?
Well, when we realized that we were going to be wanting to do a SAG film, we have a lot of friends that are not union, but then I used to act a lot more, and I was a member of the union years ago, and that was important to us to get SAG actors, and so we thought, step one, we need to do this properly. Let's get an intimacy coordinator on this film, because for a number of reasons, which we can get into in a bit. But once we did find our intimacy coordinator, it was like, let's get these breakdowns right. Let's look at all the SAG guidelines, and let's just really make these breakdowns, very specific, so that every actor that walks in knows exactly what they're signing up for. So we got those down. We were actually kicked off one of the LA casting websites. I can't remember which one it was, one of the two. We weren't allowed in the Boston one because we were based in Boston at the time. So Breakdown Services was very kind to us. They just followed through as long as we did what we were supposed to be doing. And then we went about the casting process, and it was a mixture of submissions and just watching a lot of tape and We didn't have really specifically in mind every single thing we wanted for each character, but we had a rough idea. And once we kind of narrowed it down from the tapes, then we decided let's really see people in person, because a lot of the casting was being done off tape because of the pandemic. And so we came to New York, and Michael and I had been communicating, and he had sent a couple of really great tapes. And we were just chatting on Instagram, honestly, after that, because it's that easy. You can just chat. And then we met in person in New York, and it was the first time that I really was like, this person really could embody this role for a number of reasons. And then we just had to sit for it for a sec, because you just don't want to make a decision right away. And when the other actors came along and things started to come into place and the money was there and we just offered the roles out, and it was just this incredible team. I mean, there's so much more to the casting in terms of the intimacy, because it's challenging with all the nudity and sex. So we had to do nudity riders for every single person to make sure that it was very clear what their boundaries were. I think maybe I should hand this to Brooke, because you're going to remember more details. Brooke taught us and myself so much about what to do in the casting process to really make sure that you're honoring the.
Yeah, can I ask, so Brooke, how often are you brought on that early onto a film in the casting process?
Ideally, always. And the truth is, it's a lot less common. Sometimes I get a call like 4 to 8 hours beforehand, because that's when the writer needs to be done. But actually what was amazing was Nate and Ami hired a team. I was not the only intimacy coordinator. So actually, Chelsea Pace did a lot of the pre-production and was there for months before I even joined the team. I joined about the time that we started our calls with actors to talk about what was going to happen. Then I was the lead IC on set, and Leo Mock was the assistant IC. But I do think what they did was so wise, and I would recommend it to any filmmakers out there to bring your IC on early, because by having the casting notices so clear, people that auditioned wanted to be in this film. And so by the time we were having our actor meetings, it was, we're negotiating fine details rather than, oh, shoot, this is not what I thought it was going to be. And I thought that was very, very wise of them, incredibly.
So, Michael, what on the other receiving end of these casting, how did you come across this project, and what about, I'm assuming, a casting notice or an agent's, words to you saying, oh, yeah, that's for me?
I just want to first say it's really cool to be here. Been a member for SAG for almost 20 years, so yeah, it's my first time screening a film, so I'm really honored. So the casting question, the breakdowns.
Yeah, like
so
when you came,
yeah.
how did you first learn of the project, and what about it struck you?
I just saw the breakdown for Christian, and I was like, I know what I could do something with this, and I like a lot of weird characters, and it scared the shit out of me. The character, it was really scary, and I had nightmares about it, which is a good thing for me. And it was a challenge. I mean, it was really, really challenging. And but I had the best team. I had the best IC, the best director, the best writer. Chrissy Brookshire, she's our producer. She's, I was just blessed with the people around me, and I couldn't have done it without them. I really couldn't.
So was it purely that you saw a casting call, or did an agent talk to you, or you just responded and sent in something? Or
I saw it on breakdowns, and then I called my manager, and then my manager harassed Nate for about 2 weeks, and then he sent me the script, and I loved the script, the first draft, and then I think I just put together an audition tape that came out to like 20 minutes. I think it was like every fucking scene that he was in, pretty much. And it was like a short film, so I just did it and I sent it to Nate. And Nate and Ami watched it. I don't know, and that's all she wrote for that.
Okay. Yeah. So in terms of production, what were I could imagine all kinds of challenges, but what were like the biggest challenges actually on set? I mean, you're out in nature. There's very little clothing. There's a lot going on. What I can imagine there were elements to deal with, and how many days did you shoot? Like, tell us a bit about the nitty gritty of actually getting down into shooting this thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was probably more. The challenges for you were probably different than they were for me than for you. But yes, it was a 12-day scheduled shoot, which is not a lot of days to shoot a whole film. We had specifically. I am used to that area, so I knew that if we didn't shoot before the leaves turned, it would look completely different. You know, you can see it in some of the shots. The leaves start to turn yellow, and so we knew if we didn't shoot before mid-September, we'd be screwed with that. But also, in August, it's just super, super hot. So that's kind of and then in spring, it's mosquitoes that are like the size of birds, basically. So it was this very specific window that we chose right after Labor Day. Also, the prices went down after Labor Day because it was like tourism kind of. So there's a few reasons why that was when we wanted to shoot, and we were just crossing our fingers for good weather. And we got the weather report the week before, and it was like going to be torrential rainfall for the first few days, which was frightening. And then it just happened, and immediately it was like, what can we rewrite for the rain? How can we reschedule everything? And it was tough. The rain just poured and poured. It was like more rain in 2 days than they'd had, I think, in the whole month. And we were soaked, but I think it really worked in the film. I mean, it kind of added this element. That was the plan, so we did have to resort to plan B. And then other than that, I think the challenges were just moving fast. And with the intimacy stuff, you know, even though we had the whole team and everything was, you know, seemed to be pretty well oiled and working well, it's, you know, everybody's just kind of careful. We didn't want to handle it. I didn't want any of the actors to feel uncomfortable. You know, there were robes. Every time you said cut, everyone had a robe on. You know, the prosthetics, some of the prosthetics were not expensive prosthetics. We didn't really do, you know, $1,000 applications, which some films do, where, you know, you put the prosthetic on, then you put the merkin on, the wig, and everything's very much like you could shoot it from the front. We did everything kind of like low budge style. So that's challenging, you know. There's tape and pouches on actors and everything. It looks really simple and smooth in the film, but, you know, it's like arts and crafts, basically. And so that was a challenge. And then there's COVID, and we had 5 COVID cases on the final day, which was, you know, at that point it was like everybody had COVID at once probably, and we were shooting outside, so it was a little bit of a mystery how it made it into our group. But we had finished the film pretty much at that point, so we were just really lucky that it didn't get us earlier, because I think it was like 3 cases of COVID, and you're basically like, we're shutting down. So.
Wow, and in those 12 days, were you adhering?
We lost our costume designer. Sorry, on day 1, he came up from New York with COVID. Just got off the train, tested him, and he had it. So we locked him in a house.
Wow. Perfect.
Which is another movie.
I was going to say you can make another movie from that. Perfect. So, and in terms of, so it's 12 days is an a short amount of time. Were you sticking to the dialogue as written, or was there a lot of improv? Like, how did you guys manage that?
Everything you saw was written. There was no improv. That's how great Ami is. I mean, every character had their own voice. You didn't even have to improv. Everything was just there on the page, which made life easier for actors, you know.
So, but you're churning through that stuff fast. You have to be to make 12 days, right? So, and
and that's what was unbelievable to me. I mean, I had pretty high hopes for this to turn out okay, but one of the reasons why we wanted to work with Michael was because it just felt like, from the audition all the way into production, is like, give him the material and he's just bringing something to the table for this character where you just there's a life behind it, you know, and the words are coming out of his mouth as if it's a real conversation. So if we only did 1 or 2 takes, which sometimes we had to, you know, and that's challenging for an actor, as it was for Michael at times. Like, you just don't, maybe you feel like it's not your best, or you want to do it again or whatever. And sometimes we literally just had to say, we don't have time. We just have to move on. It's good enough, even if you don't think it's your best, you know. And it's really unbelievable how the edit came together, I think, because there were literally 1 or 2 takes sometimes.
Wow.
Often, actually.
Wow. And in terms of the script, well, the whole thing, from script through production through post, did much change at all? Did you move things around at all? Did you? How was it? Was you were straight through from script production, post production?
You mean
In terms of story, in terms of structure, in terms of everything?
A few
Did you do
things.
much
I mean,
ADR?
there was not really that much ADR. I mean, we did bring Michael in for 1 day of ADR, but it was just because there were certain lines that just got like swallowed because we only had 1 sound guy, and there was, you know, birds chirping and waves and a couple of generators sometimes, and but other than that we rearranged some of the kills towards the end because you know, it was like who was going to get killed and who wasn't was a big part of it, and when people were reading it or like, oh, why didn't he kill Sam and Patrick, or so there was like one little thing we took out there and we rearranged a couple of things, but other than that it was pretty much to the T. I mean, what do you think? Am I missing something?
Yeah, I mean, I felt like you guys did an amazing job of turning the script into a movie, which, you know, from my perspective, you hand it over and then you answer questions when you have answers, and you try to stay out of the way and make sure everyone gets fed.
And what
And
else,
Ami
Brett?
is a very, very good cook. And so we were fed very well.
He cooked all my chicken breasts.
Oh, wow.
But like, was there anything else that didn't go as planned? I mean, Brooke was on set the entire time, pretty much. So, I mean, there was little things, right?
I mean, as far as the story, everything went as planned. Some of the challenges for intimacy were, for example, that scene where there's like 30 people that are nude. We had people hiding in tents and behind trees and everywhere with robes, like all hands on deck for robes. That was tricky. And one of the scenes, the scene that is the group sex scene where the 2 Kyles die, we meant to shoot that at the beginning of the day. And then we were shooting on an island that had, you had to get to by boat, and we had a boat issue that morning. So we were fighting light at the end of the day. And so there were a couple tricky things as an intimacy coordinator in that moment. Number one, we're shooting on a public lake. I can't mask the whole lake. So we had to have a really honest conversation with the actors about what we could and couldn't do. And so we knew if a boat went by, we had to stop. And we were, and it was, I mean, it was stressful because we're fighting the light. So I would say that was probably the most challenging moment. But a thing I will say, since everyone in here is actors, also we had actors whose boundaries changed based on their writer, and it was totally okay. And so if that's a question in your mind, know that you can always withdraw consent, and a really, really good intimacy coordinator and director are going to find the way to tell the story in an equally compelling way, and like you will still be honored. And the way that Nate and Ami both came to me from the beginning and said, we want the actors in a place that they can do their very best work, so what they need is our first priority. That was really awesome. And so we had an actor change their boundaries right before shooting a scene, and Nate and I talked for 30 seconds about how to reframe it, and I don't think anyone would ever be able to pick it out. So I would say those are the kinds of things that changed around intimacy, and I thought they were kind of awesome. I enjoyed the challenge.
Can I just ask, since we're talking about it,
Yeah.
what is the process of becoming? How do you decide to become an intimacy coordinator, and what's the process of becoming an intimacy coordinator?
Sure. Well, I've been doing it since 2016, and first in the theater. I've pivoted to film and TV during the pandemic because I needed to make money and theaters were still shut down. So my story is different. I was doing the work, and then one day someone asked me if I would be their intimacy director again, and I had to Google it and be like, well, what's an intimacy director? Oh, that's what I've been doing. But I think the right person for it is someone who cares about boundaries and consent and advocacy, but is really excited about the storytelling of sex and has attention to detail around that, and can stand up to people in power and also blend into the background if they need to. I think those are the qualities someone needs to be one. And now there are schools that you can go and train at, which is awesome. But yeah, I hope I answered your whole question.
No, that's great. That's perfect. Yeah.
And not to
Yeah.
toot Brooke's horn, but she's the best in the world. She's like an amazing person to collaborate with, and we couldn't have made the movie without her. She's just
Thanks.
so good.
So let's talk about Post a little bit. So it's a very quiet movie, especially for something that is essentially kind of a thriller, right? I'm curious how you came to the tone of the film, the music, the sound, everything. It's a much quieter film than one might expect. Can you talk about that a bit?
Yeah, I think tone. I mean, I've said this before, and it just hit me one day that so much of the tone is Michael. You know, the way that he took on the role. You know, so the humor, the gentleness of this character, the darkness. So much of that is the tone, and how that blended with nature. I mean, when you're out there, you can barely hear anything. You hear the crickets, you hear the loons, and the loons themselves have this sound, which you hear in the film. That's all real. They have that that clucky sound, but then at night they do sound kind of like someone's dying across the lake. So the sounds of nature and the kind of quiet that you feel when you're out there was something that we didn't want to load up with score or kind of more classic horror. And you call it a thriller. I think that's a little more accurate than people that have been calling it horror, because I think this is more of like queer horror or queer trauma, as I like to say. It's a little bit more subversive, and maybe more horror for a queer person might be lived in certain instances. This was the Pulse nightclub shooting had happened and things like that, and it was just kind of like this feeling of you're in New Hampshire and you might get murdered. It's kind of like, okay, that might actually happen. Because it did. That there was another shooting in New Hampshire. I mean, there was somebody there was a couple that disappeared on a trail in the White Mountains, and so the tone came together with our amazing composer. His name is Cully. He created all these sounds that were basically like degraded loon sounds or crickets or birds or things, and we just kind of watched the film and just kind of layered it in and tried to make sure that we didn't. The sound of the kills when he's cutting off the oxygen, that was debated, and we changed that in post and we wanted kind of like a Jaws type thing, because Jaws, is a movie that kind of fed our inspiration for this as well, being from New England, and
We almost called it Pause.
Yeah, we almost called it Pause. So yeah, I mean the tone just came
poster,
towards, yeah. We had a great sound designer, and all the sounds just kind of got layered in post, and that's such a fun part of the process.
Yeah, I mean, so you mentioned queer horror. I mean, it's having a moment right now, queer horror. How's the trajectory of the film been since finishing it? Is it gone to festivals? You're in distribution right now? What's going on now?
Yeah, the movie is going to be released on streaming June 25th. We premiered it out south in Durham, North Carolina, which is a big old queer film festival, and pretty soon after, I'm not sure when. I mean, we went to Seattle Queer, we went to Washington, D.C., we went to Atlanta, and we got contacted by this TLA Releasing, which is, they started in Philadelphia with video stores, like gay porn video stores, and they kind of branched out into, because video stores were kind of obsolete. Then they went on the web, and they started to pick up films that weren't porn but were sexually explicit films, and they wanted to distribute it in North America, UK, and France. And then we had a couple of other offers without even a sales agent. I mean, I think the film is fairly unique, and people were coming to us, which is an amazing thing. And we knew that they would know how to handle the material. They weren't going to come in and want to do this or that. And what else? What was the other part of the question?
It's exceeded our expectations.
Yeah.
You know, it's people are going to have a chance to watch it, which is awesome.
With the erotic thrillers out there, Saltburn, Femme, like all these great types of, they're all a little different, but you're right, it is kind of having a moment.
Yeah. And did you have any issues? I mean, did you have any pushback from other festivals, from distributors that were like, we can't handle this, it's too much for us, too racy, too whatever?
Yeah, of course, and it's hard to know why. You don't always need to know why, but I can imagine. We did get comments here and there about not for our audience or this or that, or and it makes sense because we made this intentionally to kind of push the boundaries. And it's sometimes I look at it and I go, maybe we pushed too far, but also I think if you really pull back for a second and look at like the erotic thrillers of the '80s that I grew up on, Basic Instinct, things like that, women being thrown up against the walls over beds, like grabbed, boobs out, this, that, nudity, so much. There's butts. There's a lot of butts in here. There's more penis than usual. But it's just, we did push a little far and on purpose to kind of.
It shouldn't really be a big thing. It should be a big thing from a craft perspective. From an actor or an intimacy coordinator and the people that they collaborate with, to see penis or anything that's homophilic on screen. It shouldn't be a big thing, but it is, and hopefully doing something like this will create space for someone else to do something else like it, or even adjacent. It's not, we're not putting answers out, and hopefully just asking some questions and making a little space.
Great.
I also think there were some intimacy coordinators that turned it down. And in the same way that they gave information to the actors to opt in, I am so grateful to those intimacy coordinators for turning it down because it wasn't the right project for them, because it was the right project for me. It is one of my favorite projects I've worked on. And I think it's a good lesson to any of us. I started as an actor, that like take the jobs that are right for you. I think you made this film for the audience that it was right for, not for every audience. And so, some films are meant to be, blockbusters, but I don't think that was the intention for this one. It was to be for us.
Right. Yeah. And well, as soon as you changed the name from Pause, it was not going to be.
Lost $10 million.
Right.
It was originally called Little Deaths up until post-production.
Up until post-production. Little Deaths? Okay.
Le Petit Mort.
Right, of course, yes. So where is it streaming? Just so people leave here and they know where to tell folks to see it.
Amazon, Apple, Fandango,
Great.
Google Play, and then hopefully the idea would be that one of the bigger streamers would kind of pick it up, give it a little bit more of a wider audience. But,
Excellent.
we're just happy.
Well, I hope you guys get more than 8 and then 12 days on your next one. Yeah. All right.
18.
18. Yeah, more than that. Anyway, thanks so much, everybody. Thanks for staying. Congratulations on the film.
Thanks for coming.